Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday to you. Hope you had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Um, I know I was just on last week. That was a truncated show because we had something come up, and I wasn't able to do a full show last week. And I fully expected to continue the conversation that I started last week. But what a difference a week will make. Um, so many things have happened over this past week, some of which was unexpected for many people. And I just thought I still want to talk about, assassination attempts and things like that. But of course, the headline news for since yesterday was that President Biden decided to step down and not run for re-election. I won't say step down because he's still president. He's not stepping down from being president. He's going to continue through his term, but he's decided not to run for his second term and has endorsed Kamala Harris. If you don't know that by now, I'm sorry. You probably not even on the internet or even looking at this broadcast if you don't know that by now because it's been all over the place. Um, and I really don't like to try to oversaturate people with information, but I thought that this was a good conversation, not just about Kamala and President Biden, but just like I started last week, the condition of the um, the country, and what we're going through. And though I know we're still a young country, we're still dealing with things for the first time in many ways. And though some things seem to repeat, we are definitely in a moment of history that I wonder if people really recognize or even take into account. So I invited my friend, and you've seen him here before, um, James Brown. Welcome, James. You've
Hey,
seen
brother
him
Mark.
before. He was here before, and you might have even seen him in the intro. I think they were a part of the intro that I played today.
Yeah.
He and his lovely wife, Sharon. She's otherwise engaged in some other activity, and I'll let James decide if he wants to talk about that or not. But I know that James understands the way of the political system in many regards, and maybe even more educated as far as politics are concerned than I am. And I didn't want to just come on and just, talk to people, but actually have a conversation as well. So we'll get started. And by all means, as you sign in, say hi, of course. Um, let us know that you're out there. If you have thoughts, questions, comments, feel free to do that. I am going to put up the phone number. If you want to call in, you can call in. We can talk for a few minutes as well to share your thoughts and your opinions um, about what's going on right now in our country when it comes to politics. And I don't want y'all to think that I'm switching to a political um, type show. This is still for me. This still has implications when it comes to spirituality too, and what we as Christians should be doing and thinking about and considering when we're looking at our candidates. So, first of all, James, thanks again. I appreciate you as always. You're always there, ready and willing to help me out because it truly was a last minute thing, probably within the past 2 hours, I think, that I asked if he could join, and he said yes. So how have you been, first of all, and then we can jump right into your thoughts, and we can go from there.
I'm doing well. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm James Brown, and Mark and I both attend Mount Pleasant Church of Ministries, and we work together in the fine arts ministry, the drama ministry. I also work in the media ministry, and formerly of the culinary ministry that's been retired. So I'm going to be focusing in the other two areas. And for a living, I work in the arts. I'm the technical director at Coppin State University, HBCU, Go Eagles. And I am the secretary for the Baltimore branch of the NAACP. Tonight, I'm going to be here more on in my own capacity as James. Uh, NAACP is a civil rights organization, and I'm not going to really speak on endorsing any candidates, but
Right.
NAACP does not endorse candidates. So I'm going to stay away from that just so that there's no confusion about me and my role and what I, though tonight I'm speaking personally about what I think is going on. So, yes, it's been a roller coaster few months. We could, turn the clock back a week with the assassination attempt, but things really started to steamroll with the debate, and that's when uh, so much tension began to arise in the political world. The Democrats saw the debate as the worst thing since the volcano erupted in Pompeii. Uh,
Wow.
I mean, they went nuclear. They just thought that it was the end of. It seemed like they thought it was the end of the Democratic Party, and of course, that just fed the Republican Party and even concerned individuals in other parties who might have wanted to support the Democratic Party, Independents, Green Party. Sometimes, those candidates do align themselves with a particular platform that, supports their agenda.
Right.
So
Right.
when one of your candidates seems to not be fit for office, it concerns it and it did concern me. Maybe
So
my
so
Go
so
ahead.
how did you feel the before? What were your thoughts prior to um the debate? What was your thoughts prior to? How were you
Uh,
feeling?
my thoughts were exactly what I saw before me. I saw two older white men running for office, and was not completely happy with the choices that I was given. But I will say that President Joe Biden has done a really good job in office uh, and accomplished many of the goals that he had set out to do,
Right.
and was very supportive of the African American community. I work in education, so he was very supportive of the education needs in the education arena for both students and the institutions. Um, I yes, he did make mistakes with the withdrawal from Iraq, but since that time, he's been on a steady upstream, and many of the accolades
Hmm.
that you've heard uh, shared about him and the things that he's done, they've been well deserved. Uh,
Yeah.
so I was concerned, because yes, since last year to this year, it seemed like he was having some challenges, and I was thinking that it might just be a season as opposed to how he's going to be the rest of his life. Or
Right.
in
Right.
because for those of you that don't know, we have a 85-year-old minister, pastor at our
Pastor.
church who,
Hmm.
we've seen him move a little slow every now and then, but then when it's for a season, it's for
Right.
a
Right.
heartbeat, and then he gets up in the pulpit when he's ready,
He
and he's on
preaches like
fire.
he's on half his age.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
so I was thinking maybe it was just a season. So going
So you
into
don't believe that, like what the opposition is trying to say, um it wasn't just hype, that he was doing such a job and that he was, still of sound mind, that he was still capable of doing the job.
I think that, is I think the season happened at the wrong moment.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
Going into the debate, they said he had a cold and things like that, but it was just an avalanche of just not good things happening with
Yeah.
him. And then he walks into the debate. Uh, he said he didn't prepare. So you add all of that in, it's it's that you
Yeah.
you you can't help but feel for him, the mistakes that he made, and again, it just fed into the things that the concerns that people had about him and his age.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, but
Well,
one of the
I
things
would
that we
say,
go ahead.
I would say, just along those lines, I always had a concern about the age, and but like you said, it was like over the past year, you can kind of see a slight decline, at least with activity, how he was moving, things like that. And like I was thinking, what everybody goes through that time. He is in his 80s. It's natural that he would slow down, but that does not mean that he doesn't still have a sound mind.
Right,
So I was really hopeful to see him really show that part, that he was sound in his mind and that he was still able to debate well and have clear thought, even though we all know that he's always stumbled a little bit here and there since he's been in Congress. So I kind of expected that. But at the end of the debate, I was uh, um, disappointed and a little heartsick to see how bad it looked, you know. Um, and in comparison to how his opponent didn't show his his usual. Now he still lied throughout the entire process, but he didn't, show that arrogant side that he used to, and he just kind
yes,
of like sat back and let Biden show what he wanted Biden to show. You know what
right.
I mean? Um, so I felt bad about it afterwards, um, and it just put me in a spot where it's like. I'm so against the policies of the other person that I feel like if Biden chooses to run, I would still support him based on his record because his record has been wonderful.
Yes,
Um, Not perfect, you know. We're never going to be completely happy with any candidate from either side. But based on what he's done, the promises he made and then did, accomplished. I felt like that was the more important thing than knowing and looking at what the previous president promised and didn't see much of anything of, you know. So I felt like I still would have to vote for him, but in all honesty, it wasn't just. I felt in the back of my mind. And I guess this is where I'm getting to. Part of me was like, I just pray he gets through the election.
hmm,
You know what I mean? And that's not a good place to be.
right,
Because then you got to think about, well, if I'm just hoping he gets to the election, what's going to happen with the next 4 years?
right. I think one of the things that exacerbated that was the fact that fellow Democrats and other people who were close to him. Um, I prefer the truth. I prefer the truth, but I also know that politics is good. It is a spin cycle. It's a spin arena. They will put a spin on things. I was concerned that the many Democrats did not try to put any kind of spin on it. Uh, I don't know if they had those feelings prior to that debate, but they definitely did nothing to hide it after the debate.
Right.
And that concerned me. This is your party leader, and we know that the other party leader has said that he could do almost anything and get away with it. Uh, and every gaffe, every mistake, yes, there were some Republicans, you could say the old line Republicans, who would take him to task on it, but the newer, especially MAGA Republicans, would put a spin on it and turn
Right. Right.
around and say, well, if our candidate did this, well, look at what your candidate did. And there was less and less of the spin on supporting President Biden after the debate than I expected. It just unraveled. Uh, I
Well, you
think
know
that.
what? I think I appreciate that more. I think I appreciate that we were honest in saying, and even Kamala after the debate, she's like, it wasn't the best showing, and she just said it right up front, we know it wasn't the best showing. And I think I appreciate that more instead of us being like the other side and spinning it to the point where there is like he can do no wrong. You know what I mean? And everything's fine. The emperor still has his clothes. I'd rather they said, there could be an issue here.
Well, unfortunately, that's often not how politics works, and I'm
Yeah.
just saying that was unusual for me, and what I've seen in politics. I'm just not used to a party almost abandoning its. First of all, the party leader. What concerned me was the lack of loyalty shown in some ways towards a party leader.
Mm,
I think that's not the best way to do it. You can still be truthful.
right.
Uh, I think some it seemed like some conversations that could have been held privately were held publicly, uh, and that just concerned me because I'm just not used to seeing that, especially in the two major parties. But yes, I would prefer that they're always honest with us and straightforward. That would be a breath of fresh air.
Yeah,
Now, I
yeah, and
do
I and I
believe that the other candidate tends to be himself all the time, and it's why a lot of people don't want him to be a leader in any way, shape, or form. Uh, he um, doesn't seem to have any real empathy for anyone other than himself and maybe his family. You say something about his family and he goes on the attack, but he has reached out, I believe, to do things to be politically correct. If there's a tragedy in the country, he goes wherever the tragedy was and speaks to people and things like that to show his empathy. But I think it's really to,
I think it's
to
just for
be
popularity.
PC. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
right. It's just for a
yeah.
show. It's not because that's who he is as a person. Um, but still, those situations are few and far between. Even to the degree that with the Israeli war, with the war in uh, the Ukraine, I just don't hear his empathy. All you hear is I can end those wars. Put me in office, and I'll end those wars in a day. Kind of comment, and that also
Yeah,
shows no respect for um, the pain and suffering that people experience in any war. Um,
yeah.
to 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 make it seem like and also
Well,
when you take that kind of stance, you and I both know that that God has a hand in everything,
right.
and I would never. If I was a leader, I still believe that God puts every leader in place. He chooses who is in charge of things. That's just my belief, and I believe that um, when you don't show any empathy, it also shows that you're not connecting to the Holy Spirit and what He is requiring of you
In that
in
moment.
moments
Yeah,
where lives are being lost. Doesn't want any of His children to suffer, and when you see someone that shows little empathy, it's hard to believe that he is going to do anything other than to serve himself. He's not going to do things because the spirit is leading him. or he truly cares about the people who are suffering.
And I want to come back to that momentarily because I do have some thoughts about that. Um, but let's go a little bit forward since we're kind of tracking a timeline. We started back with the debate, and then let's come a little forward to the assassination attempt.
Hmm.
Um, what was your thought when you saw that this happened? Were you surprised? Were you surprised by who tried to assassinate him? What were your thoughts around that? I mean, what what was your impression at that moment? Did it change your impression of our process and where we're at and what's taking place in our country?
Well, because of what I do at COPPA, and I got to preface it with this, I've had numerous interactions with security when political individuals have been on campus. Twice with President Clinton was there for an event, and I was part of the individual that set up the space. So I interacted a lot with local uh, police, security. They actually bring in Department of Justice. I mean, you see Marines there, fully garbed, fully armed, and Secret Service. So there's not one entity that's at these events, especially when the president is there, when the governor has come through, when the mayor has come through. And for past mayors, I've even known those individuals by name, and they actually contact me to get a walkthrough prior to these events. So um, I felt again, because I'm a human, I felt for the past president and the tragedy that he experienced, and I was angry because having gone through and knowing what they usually do to protect an individual, I was surprised that anyone could have been in a position to 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 take a shot at a president. I mean,
A few,
right, 6 shots got off,
right,
and I'm saying that here, the times when they've come through Coppin, and in where I work is an auditorium, and we have a booth, and the booth can see the stage, and if you're not working in the booth, they don't even want somebody in that space. And so often I would just set up everything and then leave the space because I didn't want somebody to think somebody was up there doing something wrong. But it also meant that if they saw somebody up there that wasn't me, they knew it was somebody doing wrong.
right,
I
right.
stayed out of the way and made sure that they had access to what they needed access to. And so I'm surprised that it could have happened. And my concern was if it could happen with the former president, then it could also happen with somebody that I support.
So, do
Uh,
you think? Do you really? Do you honestly? And I don't ever want to put you in a position because you never know. You may be in a position where you have to entertain these people again, and I never would want you to say anything that could jeopardize that or anything. So, you know what? I'm not. Well, I'll give my thought about it because there's always conspiracy theory,
mhm,
but for me, um, I wonder, and I'm not a conspiracy person, but having my father, I don't think you ever knew this. My father was in the Air Force, and
mm,
he was a part of military police when he was in the Air Force, and he actually was a part of back then. He was a part of the detail that flew Air Force One. So with
mm,
or with ambassadors, whenever ambassadors were coming in, he would be a part of that detail. So I understand a little bit how, like you, how security is supposed to work. And I do question myself, was it really incompetence on their side, or were people just looking the other way? and it just makes you wonder. Um, and it's sad that I even had to consider that. But either scenario is a bad scenario, you
Right.
know. Um, and like you, now I'm empathetic. By now, everybody knows I'm not a Trump supporter, but at the same time, I don't think he warrants assassination,
Right.
right? If we don't
Same.
want him in there, get out and vote. You know what I mean? Stand up, make your voice heard, right? So that he's not reelected, and that's the best way of doing it. Um, I don't agree with assassination, and I prayed for him. I prayed for his family, um, and of course, I prayed for President Biden and everybody surrounding him as well, because you just never know with the climate that we're in nowadays. Even though it came that it was supposed to be in only one person, a lone act, there's groups out there who I'm sure felt the same way. And there's groups out there that probably feel like there needs to be some type of retribution, as if um, President Biden put that person up to it. You know what I
Right.
mean? You never know how people are thinking nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
how far they take their thoughts, and which was the case with this young man. We'll never know truly what he was thinking, or what his motive was. Um, but it just says a lot about where we're at in this country, and the state that we're in, and the mindset that we're in, and how divided we are. So, um,
Well, let me
w-
say that if you when you follow politics, you can't not think about conspiracy. You just can't. And I, yes, it did cross my mind at first. The thought was, is it a hoax? Um,
mm,
and then when you found out, especially that the firefighter lost his life and other people were injured, then you start to think, oh well, maybe it wasn't, because this shooter was out to end the life of whomever they chose. But it still does not mean, and this is my concern with life in general right now, is there are individuals that have the money and the influence to take advantage of people who are mentally and emotionally unstable, and threaten them, convince them that taking this particular action is beneficial in some way. So yes, I do think it's possible for there to be some kind of conspiracy, um, as long as we continue to end the life of the shooters and do
mm,
not have the opportunity to have an interview with them after. I think individuals like myself are always going to not discount conspiracy, because
mm,
I'm always going to say in my head, if only we could interview the shooter.
right, right,
If we could interview the shooter, we and that would eliminate for me, or reduce to me the conspiracy, the hairs that go up on the back of your neck kind of thing, that
right, right, right.
Arsenio Hall, things that make you go
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
so that's never going to leave. And so uh yes, that's how I felt about that. And I and I agree with you totally. That's not the way, to uh, to disagree with anyone. I mean, it's not how we should disagree with our neighbors,
right.
um, ending their life, or even just getting into a fight. It even if it doesn't end in life, it doesn't have to result in violence of any kind.
You're
Um,
absolutely right. You're absolutely
so,
right. So
so
listen, y'all, we're kind of like going through this timeline over the past month and a half, actually a little
mhm.
bit more than that. Um, we talked a little bit about the debate and Biden's performance. We just talked about, the assassination attempt. And then, another thing, well, before I say that, um, feel free, please give us a call if you want to join the conversation. You have a a thought, an idea, or a question, you can do that. Or of course, you can always put it into the comments. Let's try to make this as interactive as possible as well. Um, but another thought I just had while I was saying that, and I lost it just that quick. It was about the assassination attempt. Hmm, I lost it. Um, uh, I just had my birthday last week and it's showing up on me already. I can't remember one thing for another, one moment to the next moment. Um, Maybe it'll come back later. But yeah, we talked about, you know, um, the debate, the assassination attempt as well. Um, and that kind of moves us a little bit further along into the convention, the Republican convention. And one thing that you had started talking about before, and I said I was going to get back to, um, was the empathy piece and how um, they try to appear to be empathetic about things that are happening. And one thing that really got on my nerves this time around, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but the young lady that was killed by the, I think it was Venezuelan, I'm not sure, the immigrant, and they had her husband, I think it was, or was it her brother, speak.
Hmm.
Um, and it kind of irritated me because to me, that's not showing empathy. For me, it was showing them trying to manipulate a tragic situation so that they could further their argument. Because I'm like, it's not as if the only people that are killed in the United States are those who are killed by immigrants.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it's such an outrage for that, why isn't it an outrage? Why aren't we really thinking about the real issues that are happening within the United States, whether there is immigrants coming across the border or not, criminals coming across the border or not? Where's the outrage for everybody who's dying? In our city is a perfect example. DC is another example. I was in DC this weekend, and their news headlines are just like our headlines here in Baltimore. X amount of
Hmm.
people were shot, X amount of people were murdered, whatever. And that's not immigrant on American, that's American on American. How come there's not the same outrage? You know what I mean? How come we're not willing to go ahead and start really talking about the real issues of mass shootings, which is the availability of guns, you know? Um, so for me, just because you bring someone in a victim's relation, or I can't, again, I don't know, was it a husband or was it a brother? I can't remember. Um, but um, you bring them up and you put them in front of everyone as if look at what Biden did, and then you want to blame Biden for that. But then you don't want to blame yourself when you're not trying to change the culture of guns, right?
Right.
When you got your lobbyists putting money in your pocket, you want to turn the other way, right? And I'm not saying that's just Republicans; that's all of
Right.
them, you know.
Well,
Um,
also, it's so, there are two thoughts I have. One, I'll speak directly to that and say that it does concern me when uh, the local news station here, Fox 45, uh, will take a story and there'll be a tragedy associated with it, but they use it to say how excellent they are at reporting on this one particular issue, but not taking it into consideration how you are re-victimizing the victims. And that's what I feel about moments like that. You know, how many times does someone who experienced something that they didn't want to experience, whether it was criminal or illegal or abusive, and it's in the news, and every time you turn the TV on, every commercial on a particular station brings it up over and over and over and over and over again.
right,
And we have to understand that that is the way. Um, I, I I I do not believe that um, old school Republicans always felt that way. There were certain people in the party, like a Newt Gingrich and others, that would be a little extreme in their statements. But for the most part, they spoke to issues and really were about their party line and how they, could lead the country better. And
Based on their policies.
right, based on their policies. Um, this MAGA Republican, far right um, agenda is it seems to be less about policy and just trying to be in charge,
And
um,
invoke fear.
believing that once they're in charge, they will do what they want. Um, and it's important that anyone that's listening, you make up your own mind, but do your research, read about the individuals who are in office, who have been elected, who are currently MAGA Republicans and other Republicans, and I believe that there's been greater policy growth with those who are not don't consider themselves MAGA Republicans, and uh, those MAGA Republicans are all about, supporting the current Republican candidate for presidency and trying to get him back into office. Um, if if he says don't vote for this, don't vote for that, that's what they do. If he says vote for this, that's what they do. They vote for it. And with the whole immigrant issue, it just concerns me that there have been bipartisan efforts uh, to put good immigration laws in place
Right.
that we could have had this problem solved 10 years ago or more. We're talking about back to President Obama,
Yeah. Yeah.
where it was the no Republicans who refused to vote on anything President Obama voted on. And even more so, when the former president had his first 4 years, he didn't get anything passed.
Mm-hmm.
And so he, if it just shows how, he said, except for building a wall, he did not have a policy.
At all.
They have had actions that they wanted to take, not put in policies. And when again, most of the bills that I learned about were bipartisan. They weren't just put forth by the Democrats. Uh, those steps that they wanted to take were would have been a step in the right direction. They weren't
Right.
perfect,
Right. It wasn't going to
but they
fix
were a step
everything,
in the
but
right.
like you said, it would have been in the right direction.
And
And
so it just leaves them that with the only message is the same message that they've been stuck in lately, is that we're bringing in murderers, rapists, and drug dealers, and
they're working off of fear.
that yes, the fear
That's the
mongering,
policy. That's
right?
the policy. Um,
And
and
I was not moved by I always try to find something good um in the conventions, because I'm never fully happy with the Democratic conventions either. But this was status quo. It's the same thing I've seen, every year. So but the messaging, um, uh, it's just getting farther and farther to the right, and uh, it just scares me.
okay. So were you at all surprised? I mean, I was surprised. I didn't. I thought that there would be enough Republicans to say no. We don't need that foolishness. back in the office again? Does does he have that much power, or does he have so much information? I don't know. I'm just, sometimes I look at it and I'm just kind of dumbfounded. Um,
Yes.
that knowing what they know, seeing what they saw, that they would still back him and nominate him.
I am concerned about, a certain, you know, cultish nature behind things
Hmm.
that uh, to follow an individual. I mean, I believed when I was growing up, and once I started learning more about politics, and it wasn't overnight, it took years to really learn, what is really about policy and what is really about personality. And I believe that growing up, these were policy differences, and now, and so for a while, you could say the evangelical movement in politics it did make me look at spirituality and God's hand in things and how we should be choosing our candidates. Um, but now the messaging, um, coming from a church where we preach from the Bible, it scares me. I wonder what Bible these individuals are reading, because some of the things that they talk about and profess as part of their political platform is nothing that I believe is that God supports.
I agree.
And
I
so
agree.
there's a cultish nature. Again, an individual who has proclaimed how invulnerable he is, that he could commit crimes and not be touched. That's somebody that's deifying themselves, and
Yep.
people want to believe that there's a person like that in the world and have aligned themselves behind him. One of the things that, I'll just interject it here, is for a long time, you saw that Europe was having um, a conservative movement. And look at the last two elections, and they've ousted their conservative parties.
Yeah,
So,
but see, that's the problem. It doesn't seem like, I don't know. Maybe we have to live with it longer before others start to say no, this is not the
mhm,
right direction.
right.
Um, have Michelle. Hey, Michelle. Thank you for calling. You had a thought or a statement you want to make? Okay.
Did she have something in the chat about
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Hold on a second, Michelle. Can you hear Michelle? I'm James.
no.
Okay. Um, all right. Yeah. Right.
The former president.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The former president.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The former president.
You're absolutely right. I doubt there ever will be. I doubt there ever will. Yes. All right. Well, I appreciate your call, Michelle. I'm let you go in case somebody else wants to call in, but I appreciate everything that you said. I agree with everything that you said. One of the things that she was saying, thanks again, Michelle. One of the things that she was saying at the beginning was she didn't necessarily agree with what you were saying before, James, about him not passing any laws because he did pass some laws. He did get some things done, but in all honesty, some of the things he did get done um, put us backwards as well. You know, it didn't necessarily help the black community. It didn't necessarily help women. Okay, there's a lot of things that he did not necessarily do that was for the benefit of the country.
Well, I don't think I didn't say that he didn't do anything because I would never. I don't believe usually in absolutes. So I would never say
It may
that.
have been me. I don't feel like he did much of anything. And I
uh,
think I was
but
more so thinking about like the wall, like you brought up yourself.
right.
You
Uh,
know,
but
one thing I
but
always
one of the
ask
things
is, so how much did Mexico pay for the wall that he did get
that
completed?
Well, one of the things that I'll say is, when he changed the tax laws, that hit me big time. I have been paying taxes every year since the tax laws were changed.
Hmm.
So I have been negatively
Yeah,
impacted
me
by
too.
it. And
Yep.
so I'm sorry. I'm not going to, when you hit my pocket, I'm
But
not
now
going
he
to.
wants to blame Biden for our pockets being low, but it's
Right.
based on his taxes.
Right. And, the good things that happened and while he was in office, he inherited a strong economy. Um, and because, he came in saying that he's a billionaire and knows how to do this and do that. And when we hit the slowdown in the economy due to the pandemic, he had no answer for it. So while there were some things that he did to progress the country, I have to hold him responsible for the decline and his lack of ability to adjust. When we hold, elect someone into that office, whether I elected him or not, whether I voted for him or not, I'm expecting him to pivot in a bad situation. If you say you have the skills as a businessman to pivot in a bad situation, then that's what I expect. I did not experience that. The
Yeah,
country did not experience that. And that's, whether people agree with him and think that he is electable and should be given another chance. I'm looking at the data and I'm not impressed with the data. Um, so
Okay.
Um, there was something in the chat. One of the individuals that put something about the 2025 project, and I just wanted to touch on that. I hadn't read all of it, but it's very much from what I have learned is a manifesto that is about really changing government and more or less putting people in place, uh, more or less getting rid of employees, even changing the Supreme Court. Um, uh, and, we, all of us have a responsibility to read the documents that are out there. So I don't want to comment more on it if that's the way that it's leaning. I'm basing it on the activities that they did before. The last president put individuals in office that, to be honest, I don't think that they did a good job. They were individuals that had, like he put Ben Carson in as the director of the Secretary of the Interior, I believe. The man
Hmm.
had no experience in that area. That
Right.
makes absolutely no sense to me.
It was
If you're
visual.
gonna,
That's all it was.
you're going
That
to
was, it was
put
the
your
optics.
Right. If you're going to put somebody in a position, at least don't handicap them by for example, I'm in the arts, and that's what my strong suit is. Don't put me in charge of the military. That's
Right. Right.
you know, um, if you see your soldiers out on the field in pink tutus and singing instead of shooting, uh, hey, you
Well,
put
look
me
at the leader. Yeah. Right.
you
Right.
you put look who you put in
Right.
charge,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
I just don't. I questioned almost every appointment that he made, and the lack of experience in those areas when he put them in those offices. And that's if that's it that lends some credence to me to the 2025 project, that is a possibility, that may be the steps, the that may be what um, uh, people
Well,
want to do in this country, to move it forward in a way that they want to move it forward. I'm,
well, I
I'm
don't. I'm not
a
sure the
little,
word "forward" is the right word. Um, they want to move it, but they would forward. I would, at least the way
I,
that we think about it, I don't think it would be the right word. Um, well, just for the few minutes we have left, um, I do want to get to the
yes.
last part of our little timeline here of Kamala Harris um, getting Biden once he's started. Now that he's said, I'm not going to race. I'm not going to continue the race. Um, I'm going to step aside. And honestly, for me, it says to me part of his character, and I think he's shown it throughout his career in politics. He's more concerned about the country than his own ego,
Hmm.
than his own achievements. Um, I applaud him. Now I'm sure he was underneath a lot of pressure, and people were in his ear, and I think probably getting COVID. And there's people that say maybe he didn't have COVID. Who knows? Um, and all this is being staged as well. But um, for him to put aside his ego and say what's best for the country, and based on what I'm seeing, the numbers and what I'm hearing, it's not likely I could win. Um, I applaud him for stepping aside and saying, let's look to the future. And I do believe that Kamala can be the future. Um,
Hmm.
I think that's a major thing. Um, so I do appreciate him for doing that. Uh,
Yes.
now, having heard things um, and questions that have come up in the past, and certainly there's going to be a lot of questions coming up over the next few weeks about her being competent and things like that. And actually, I've been hearing a lot of good things over the past 2 days, which is expected. Um, You personally, do you think that she's capable of leading this country?
Yes, just start off with a yes. I think that she uh, can run this country, and there's something that we don't really know too much about. I believe in my heart of hearts that most vice presidents, from the day that they accept that office, are groomed in so many different ways to take over in case a president is not able. So, whatever we think of her ability, I mean, if we think of just her raw talent, what she brought in on day one, to me says yes, she can. But the preparation that you have to go through and the things that you have to learn about to take over, even if uh, there's that temporary transfer of power that can take place if a president is deemed unable to serve because of a medical situation. Let's say
Right,
if a president has to go under anesthesia, you have to have a temporary transfer of power.
right.
And so during that period of time, your vice president is basically your commander in chief.
Yep,
Uh, that's not something that that they just walk in the door and go, oh, this is what you're going to do. From day one, they get training for that.
right,
So
right.
there's that aspect of it. And then um, I've heard her speak. I've listened to many of her speeches over the last couple of years, speaking on different policies. And I do believe that she is capable of leading this country. And I think that she is capable of leading the Democrats to success. Now, one thing that just to let you know, last night, um, I love my black women so much. Last night, a group called Win with Black Women, somebody sent me a link and they didn't tell me what it was about. They told me that it was about uh, individuals that wanted to talk about Vice President Harris and her ability and supporting her as commander in chief and as a nominee, let's say as a nominee first. And the women wanted to just have a conversation, and they brought in many of the individuals who we know of as African American female leaders, like Maxine Waters and Bernice King and others like that. So I didn't know that's what it was about. I didn't know that it was sponsored by this organization of women. So it started off with a few hundred women, and by the end of the night, they had over 40,000 women on this Zoom call, and they were, partially responsible for a lot of the money that you saw that was raised. I think they said it was 80 something $million that was raised today, overnight, and they were responsible for moving that forward. Today at 8 o'clock, the men get their chance. There's a group called Win with Black Men
Hmm.
that having a Zoom call. I posted it on my Facebook page, but you can also look up the website is now. I'm not a member of either group, but I so enjoyed the dialogue last night. It started around 7 and went well after midnight. And I
Wow.
don't think tonight's is going to go as long, but I do know Roland Martin is going to help to moderate it as well as others. But if you look on their Facebook pages, Win with Black Women, that's that organization. And then tonight is Win with Black Men. And so they'll be starting in a few minutes. The link is on their Facebook page, on their website. And I, again, posted it on my Facebook page. Uh, so I made a little donation last night because with my medical situation, I'm not. I don't have as much money in my pocket right now, but I made a little donation last night, and I'll make a little donation to the men to support the brothers. And that's something that we have to be honest about is, um, who is going to represent our interests the best. And it's more than just following the party line, saying I'm a Democrat and who's going to be the best Democrat. We really do have to, pray about our leaders. I do. I may not name them, but I do pray every day that the leaders listen to God's voice, that they listen to the spirit that connects us all, and they listen, and God will have an assignment for them. And if they follow that assignment, we have to then pray for that discernment so that we can feel comfortable when our leaders make certain decisions, because the spirit will be speaking back to us. I got your back. I told them to go do that.
Right, right,
That's
right.
what I pray for every day. Every day. I pray for the leadership of our church. I pray for NAACP, for arena players, for Coppin State University, and for the whole world in general. That's how I have to pray. Um, and that's how I don't get crazy about all this. Yes, I I was concerned after an assassination attempt. I was concerned when the leader of the Democratic Party steps out of a race. When those major shifts happen, you have to go, oh my gosh, and then you remember, okay, I'm prayed up. I know
Yeah,
where I am.
yeah,
So I need, but I'm gonna touch base with God and say, okay, Father, where am I? Where are we? What's going on here? Because
yeah, yeah,
I don't know. And I have to listen to see if I get, any kind of message. The message that I'm getting so far is just, calm my heart. I'm still in charge, and I'll tell you what's going to be next when I'm ready to tell you.
there you go. That's the bottom line. You always got to remember that he's sovereign, and as you mentioned
Hmm.
before, he rises kings and he sits down kings, and that's the bottom line.
Right,
He puts in
and he
place
may
who he
have
needs
an
to have in
assignment.
place. That
He may
right.
have an assignment for
That's it.
any of us, for anybody that's listening to this discussion tonight. He may have an assignment for you. He may want you to go out and do something. He may want you to drive people to the poll. Let's say you don't take a side and you just help somebody to get to the polls. Somebody picks up the phone and calls you and says, I'm having car trouble. And you remember it's election day. Well, the
Yeah,
reason they're calling you is because they need to get to the polls that day.
there you go.
Maybe early voting, whatever the situation may be. Maybe God is putting it in your heart to be an election judge, because they need election judges. So, pray
Something I'm
about
considering.
what you can do, and serving God, um, and be part of the process. And I guarantee you, there, as one of our ministers preached about it, and I think Bishop talked about the fact that, you get your rewards on heaven that you brag about, but sometimes when you just serve God and just do what he tells you to do, there's a reward for you in heaven. And
Absolutely.
so just listen to that voice, and whatever assignment God has for you, follow through on it. um Learn to find the truth, and ask for discernment, and make sure that that's what you share. Don't share every post you get, even if you think it's funny, because not everybody may have your level of discernment.
Yep. Yep.
You have to make sure you share the truth.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. That was good. Um, I'll just end with this thought, and um, yeah, you know, it hit me. Felicia and I was watching on TV yesterday, and it just kind of like him, and I was like, I never thought that I could be, or we could be, on the verge of having our first female president, let alone our first female president of color. Um, and it just kind of like made me stop and think um, about how far we have come, and yet at the same time, how far we still have to go.
Hmm.
You know, And we used that word earlier, forward. Yeah, we are moving forward, and I think that's why it's so important that we get out and vote. I know not everybody feels that our vote matters, but it truly does matter. um, and I encourage everyone, just as James just did, get out there and vote. Make your voice be heard. Your voice will never be heard if you don't vote. Right? There's never going to be the perfect candidate. There's always going to be something wrong with somebody. I say it all the time. There's nobody in your life that you agree with 100% of the time about every issue in your life. So this is going to be no different. So get out there and vote. Um, and don't vote for Kamala because she's a black woman. Take the time to find out her policies, her positions. Take the time to find out what are Trump's policies and his positions, right? Sift through all the spin on both sides, right? Find the truth and then figure out which one do you line up with the best, right? I don't care which side it is. Once you find out what side do you line up the best, and you feel like you found the truth, um, vote. That's the most important thing. Okay, because one side or the other is always going to count on you not voting so that they could get in. So vote. All right.
Well, can I
James,
say,
thank you.
I want this last real quick spiritual pepper in there, or my personal pepper is if Vice President Harris gets in office with only 106 days to get in office after everything that has happened this year. I'm gonna think that maybe there might be some spiritual message in that for us because the,
Wow.
it is it's I don't like to keep using that word that we heard during the pandemic, but gosh, how unprecedented that would be that we would have our first female and second president of color with just 100 days to get them in office.
Wow.
That there's something in there. There's a message in there against the kind of candidate that she will have to go up against.
Wow. Well, you can believe that you're going to be hearing some interesting sermons over the next few weeks. It's going to be some interesting sermons, not just at our church, but
Woo, yeah.
across this country. It's going to be some interesting sermons taking place, and I can't wait to hear them. I
Yes,
can't
me
wait to
too.
hear 'em.
Maybe
Hey,
I'll put you up in the pulpit soon. I can't wait to hear yours.
oh boy, oh boy, it'll be interesting. Um, Hey, I put a question out there, y'all, both on Keep It Real Conversations page as well as my page. Do you believe that Kamala Harris will be a competent president? And just give it a like or a frowny face. I'm just interested to know. You can do it now if you're watching live. You can do it later if you're watching at a later point. Um, but James, I truly appreciate you, man. You know I love you. I love working with you alongside you whenever we can. Love your wife as well. Um, y'all great friends to the Moore family, and I
Mm,
appreciate you taking this time to spend with me and my friends online as well. Thank you. I know I didn't really recognize a lot of people as you came in. I saw a lot of new faces. So I thank y'all for dropping in and just checking it out for even if it was just for a few moments. Um, come on back, y'all. Real soon. Basically, what I'm doing now, instead of doing every Monday, I'm trying to do second and fourth Monday. But because last week, like I said, I had to truncate my show. I decided to come on. Well, actually, this is the fourth Monday, isn't it?
yep.
So I was off a week anyway. So this would be my regular Monday anyway. So I will see you second Monday next month. Okay. Um,
And while you're checking, I love you too, Mark, and you and Felicia. And I'll be back at any time you ask me if my schedule allows, especially while I'm still recovering.
that's true. That's true friendship. I appreciate that. All right. Well, you know what? I love talking with you, especially when it comes around this particular table. So don't be shocked when you see that text come through again.
Okay.
Um, between now and November, I'm sure it's gonna come. All
Yeah.
right. So once again, y'all, thank y'all again for joining. Hold on a second, James. Thank y'all again for joining. Um, please, if you have not already started to follow the page, please follow the page and share the conversations. I hope you got something out of it. And I know some of you that may have checked in may not agree with my political stance and where I stand, and that's fine. Let's not be like our politicians and we get to the point where it's like we don't agree, therefore we can't be friends. I hope nobody unfriends me. I definitely would not unfriend you just because we don't necessarily agree about everything, especially in the world of politics. Um, but please, um, follow the page, share the conversations, like the page, always reach out. We really didn't get into a really big political, I'm sorry, religious, although we did talk about the spirituality. We touched on it just a little bit. But I think what I'll do one more time, the scripture that I actually shared, or one of the scriptures I shared last week was this Romans 12:18. And it says, if it is possible, as much as it depends on you, live peaceably with all men, right? And that's not saying live peaceably with Democrats, live peaceably with Republicans or independents. It's whenever you can do to make this world better, do it. Okay. And we need to be peaceable with one another. We need to be cordial to one another. We need to love one another because that was a command from our Lord and our Savior. So, with all that being said, if you don't know who Jesus Christ is, I invite you to call, leave a message. Um, I appreciate um, these conversations, but the most important conversation you will ever have is a conversation about knowing who Jesus Christ is and what he did for you. And if you don't know what that is, you can call the number that's scrolling at the bottom, or you can always send a comment or direct message me, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. All right. Um, that's the most important conversation you will ever have, by the way. And there is only one election you can be sure of, and that's if you accept Jesus Christ, you know you'll go to heaven to be with the Father. All right. So that being said, thank you again. I look forward to seeing y'all second Monday of what's next month? August. All right. Be blessed.